welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I am so excited you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Gwen Newell. She currently works at Cannon Press as their marketing producer. She has worked in marketing for years. Before that, at a local company in town where she ran events for hundreds of people. She hosted conferences and had to show hospitality in a different sort of setting than her home. She is expecting her first baby. She's 6 months pregnant, so that's very exciting. And she is releasing her first novel. It comes out in 3 weeks. So she is just a treasure trove of all sorts of talents. Welcome, Gwen.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself. First of all, I'm very interested in this novel. Tell me about it.
Okay. Well, the novel is, it's not my first, but it's my first published. I've been writing trash novels since I was 7 and churning out little, sequels to Jurassic Park or, rewrites of the Little House books starring a girl named Martha because Laura was taken, but it seemed like an old-fashioned name.
Yes.
So this novel is about a girl who's grown up on a prison ship and doesn't know it. So when you're born and raised in hell, you don't really know the difference. So picture somebody who's born and raised in a North Korean prison camp or even just North Korea, same diff. Mm-hmm. And population is strictly controlled because there's a worldwide flood. So everybody's on boats. You don't have any crops outside. You have to grow everything inside. So sort of understandably, you have to keep an eye on population. And this girl is part of the sort of like the Hitler youth of the ship, the children's army, the little enforcers who narc on their parents and everybody else. And she's like the number one, sir, yes, sir, I'm going to do everything right. I love the rules, that kind of person, kind of a Saul of Tarsus little character. Mm-hmm. And she finds a baby that should not be there. And then she's confronted for the first time with like a real dilemma where she's like, I know what I should do, but I haven't ever had to do this yet. So she has to decide whether to turn it in or keep it and become the ship's most hunted fugitive. And meanwhile, have nowhere to go.
Interesting premise.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I've never heard of anything like this.
The stakes are high.
Very interesting. And it's being released from Cannon Press.
Yes, it is.
Can you also buy it other places?
Yes, you can buy it on Amazon. I think those are the 2 places. You can get Kindle and hardback on Amazon, and then hardback and audiobook. The audiobook will be released on Canon Plus about the same time as the hardback. So October 24th is when the hardback releases.
And this is a youth novel. What age would you recommend it for?
I would say upper middle grade. And people are like, what's that? Which I also would have asked until I knew what that meant. And that is usually they say, you hand a book to a reader who's just slightly younger than the main character. The main character is 13. So if that kind of tells you like it's a little bit mature, it's tapping on the door of young adult, but it's not as dark or angsty or filled with romance as a young adult like Hunger Games is going to be.
It's more of an adventure, but it also pulls in some really deep, thoughtful, moral
For
issues.
sure. Like a 7-year-old, like sometimes middle grade is like 8. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, maybe 8 middle. If to listen to it as mom reads it aloud and decides whether they can understand this, whether they're even interested. And then maybe, this part about potentially killing a baby, I don't know. Like maybe she doesn't want her. I don't think that would be too dark, but I think that there might be police interrogation scenes where it's kind of cruel. There's no physical violence, but there's a lot of threatening, a lot of menace in the story. Pretty tense. It's like a little spy thriller. So they could gauge, does my 8-year-old need to hear this? Or should I just say, and they interrogated the girl and then just move right along.
Right. Whereas more of an 11, 12, 13-year-old.
They're coming of age.
Much more appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to read it.
Well, thank you. I'm excited for it to finally be out in the world.
Oh, that is just so exciting, especially if you've been writing for so long, for you to finally have your first
something
novel
to show for
published. Were you inspired to do this because of completing your master's degree through New St. Andrews? You did do the master's program in writing?
I did do the Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. It's called the Camperdown I forget. Now I'm going to garble the title, but it's words. Oh, I can't remember. Camperdown Writers Kiln, I think, is where you can find it on Instagram. You guys should apply. I think it's too late for this year because they have their first residency the week my book comes out. But anyway, any writers or wannabe writers should definitely apply. So anyway, I was not inspired by the program. I was inspired because let's see here. How far do I back up? I've always just wanted to write. Like it was just ever since I was 7, I was like, I am a writer. Even if I never get paid, I will never stop kind of thing, which is the best way to do it. Because when I divide the money I will make from this book, take that and divide it by the hours that I put into it, I'm not getting paid.
Not even getting minimum wage.
No, it's like, it's not the goal either. My goal is like, I have a story, I need to tell it. And I really hope it blesses other people. So anyway, I was inspired by that. And then I joined the program. Long story short, because Nate Wilson used to run the program and it was the only way I could get him to read it. It was because he didn't have time outside. But if I was like, hey, if I join and make it my big thesis, basically.
Then you can have a really great editor.
Yes. And actually, Nate doesn't edit. He does more like big picture, change this. She's not sympathetic enough, blah, blah, blah. And he took the main premise of the story and helped me correct it before I wasted a ton of time on a bad draft. So he's more like that big picture stuff. Editing would be like Brian Cole at Canon, and then his editorial team beneath that. And they were also super helpful.
Well, that's very exciting.
Thank you.
So jumping back into hospitality, you did mention that you, in your previous job, sometimes ran conferences for hundreds of people, but you also are very hospitable in your home. So tell me a little bit about the hospitality you do. I know that I often see invitations in the church bulletin, or maybe it's emails, different things, but advertise that you host a coffee hour in your home. You did this before you were married, and now even after you're married, you have a coffee hour after church, Sunday after the first service. So from 10:30 to 12, it's geared towards singles, open invitation, come over and just fellowship.
Right.
Which is amazing. That's such a fun idea, because a lot of times right after church, you're visiting with your, whoever's sitting near you, or, grab a few friends, but you have 15 minutes before the next service starts, maybe 20, 30.
Yeah.
And you can't really visit with very many people.
No.
You get a few conversations in and then you're having to leave.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay,
how
so
you started that.
Coffee hour began, there were a couple of inspirations, and then they all sort of solidified into this idea. One was the fact it was January of 2021. So coming off a pretty ragged year for hospitality and fellowship, and also still being single at that time. I was in my mid-30s and I have family in town, with little nieces and nephews, but they're frequently busy and have their own life. So it's not like I can really be can I just sort of live in your house and get kid time sort of thing. You can do that a little bit, and then it's like, no, you need to, you can't just leech off of that. So there was nothing to do on Sunday afternoon where everybody else is going home to their families, as they should. It's like, that's frequently the only down day for a busy homeschooling or Logos family. Whereas for me, it was like how do I fill this time? And I knew I have this need and I feel super lonely, and it's easy to get super self-absorbed when you are needy and lonely and honestly have something that you need to fix, right? So I was like, okay, so I have this problem, don't know how to fix it. I started praying about it. And then my friend, my roommate at the time, her father, now an elder at Christ Church, hosted what he called coffee hour after church, because he had 9 kids, 3 of whom were either in college or right after college, or probably 5 of whom were about to be in college, like all in that sort of late teens, early 20s group. 2 of the girls lived with a ton of girls their age. Like, I don't know if they had 5 or 7, 8 girls in a big house. And he would have them over so he could, one, fellowship with his kids, but also be that sort of, I got the sense of being very father avuncular sort of figure to other girls who are away from their parents here in Moscow while they attend school. So I went to a couple of the coffee hours, and they would sit and talk about the sermon, and the dad would lead that conversation and the mom would serve donuts, and everybody wanted to be there.
And he's offering that hospitality, and you're offering that hospitality in your coffee hour to people who probably are in the same situation where they're in town, maybe with roommates, maybe by themselves in an apartment. They don't have family.
Not necessarily. Or sometimes some of them do. They might be a local, like they have family local, and then they're really split up. Oh, half my roommates have somewhere to go on Sunday afternoon, so I'm extra lonely, that kind of situation. So I thought, what if I host a coffee hour where I'm not leading a conversation on the sermon, because I'm not a dad, I'm not going to be that much in charge. But I was like, what if we said, hey, everybody come on over, and it's a free chance to talk about the sermon. Sometimes you can feel a little bit awkward, maybe, unless you're having talking with a really close friend, you can feel a little awkward talking about spiritual things or things that excited you about the sermon. But if I was like, hey, this is designed for people to come from Trinity, from Christchurch, from downtown, where we all heard different sermons and we can all talk about it, and I'll serve food. And it began with just like very few people. And I had to pray because, of course, I love my house filled with people. 3, I was like, wait, Lord, wait, what, 3? Like, where's the rest of them? And I had to pray, well, wait, who are you doing this for anyway? Like, if you need something, as somebody famously said, give. So that's why this also started, is like, I can't just think I need people, therefore have them over. But it was more like, I need people. Maybe there are other people like me. And can I focus on serving their needs? Which means if 2 people showed up and that was it,
that's
rejoice.
Who God meant to be there.
Exactly. I was like, Lord, whoever you want to come to coffee hour, whoever needs to be here, then let them come. I will welcome them in.
It's a really small group. You get to really know those people individually. And
You
then later
do.
when it's huge,
in a different way.
It's a different way.
It's a different level.
Touch on, this person's life and their week, but you don't.
Right.
It's not the same as if
it's not
a
as
real small
intimate
group.
Yeah. So that's how we began. It was just like out of a need that I felt that I thought that other people might have, and then truly trying to do open hands hospitality in terms of, it's okay if it's small, it's okay if it's big, it's okay if I ruined the food. It's okay if kids tracked in mud, or sometimes people would bring their kids not realizing my house is not probably the funnest place for kids because there's only books and coasters and
you're
that's
single,
it.
And so your type of decoration has not evolved into.
There are no blocks.
Well, and when you don't have children, it's okay to have the white chair.
That's
or
okay. The white couch.
The white couch or the throw rug.
The things that just don't move. You set the flowers there and they don't budge. I remember one time a girl, probably in her 20s came over, but she brought her 14-year-old younger brother. And I was like, he's totally welcome, but oh my word, he's probably going to have a miserable hour sitting here. So I was like, what do I do? And he was being super polite. But I said, do you like weapons? And
you spoke his language with that.
I had an old, I think it's a muzzle loader musket, double-barreled musket from probably like the 1870s, passed down from my grandma,
That's
her
really
side of the
cool.
family. So I'm like, it's broken, doesn't work anymore. Brought out like an imitation tomahawk that my grandma had also given me.
So
just was like, here are all the knives.
Instead of grandpa.
It was, the other grandfather
Love it.
bought my firearm for me. So I didn't bring that one out. That one was too real. That I was like bringing out every pocket knife that I had and just like, here, take a look, 14-year-old boy. And I hope that you don't hate my house.
14-year-old boy toys.
Yes.
That's pretty great. What other kind of hospitality do you do? And just before we go into that, I love the idea when we talked a lot about different kinds of hospitality on here, and a lot of times we are talking about families offering other families hospitality, but I love the idea of someone who is maybe still single, a little bit older, not just saying, well, I can't do it. I don't have a husband and a family and a big house. And no, you give what you have. And like you're saying, I need this fellowship and I know others are out there who would like it too. So I'm going to offer it.
Right.
And what you mentioned, when you're feeling lonely or sad or you need something, you serve. You put yourself out there.
Yes.
And if you do that, people respond to that.
100%. You cannot, you can, it doesn't usually go very well. But if you announce a need, like maybe do that to the Lord or a close counselor or your pastor's wife, or somebody who can honestly like help you out of it and help get your eyes off of yourself. But fortunately, I knew enough at that point in my mid-30s, had enough self-awareness that I was like, I cannot trumpet this need. Like I need to start doing something about it versus begging other people. I probably did go through a time where I did that unconsciously, for sure. But then realizing, why don't I hop to it?
Well, a lot of times what people don't realize is you're asking them to do what you're unwilling to do.
Exactly.
You're
if you put it that way, then you're like,
them,
what am I doing?
Yeah. Well, why don't you host a coffee hour that I can come to and
Right.
sit and be served? Like, well, God may want you to be hosting the coffee hour so
Right.
that others can be served and it be a form of ministry. And
yeah, and it was really, again, seeing it in this other
hospitality.
family working. Like all that I had known so far was like, why don't I have a family? Why don't I have a husband? Why don't I have a family that does let me crash their couch every single day whenever I need it? And you're like, oh, that's, when you have that fixed as the only way to fill your quote unquote need, it's hard to think of anything else. But when I saw this dad host the coffee hour, I was like, now that's a specific idea that I can do. And I had to put away the fear that nobody would come. I still have to put away the fear that nobody will come. It has ballooned and then shrunk and then ballooned and then shrunk. And it really goes through just like life cycles. Mm-hmm. And you have to be okay with like, well, it's my 3 best friends who showed up. Mm-hmm. That great. We all get to eat 3 times as much and talk a little bit more intimately and share prayer requests. Like sometime if only girls show up, you start praying for, like, we'll stop and just pray for each other because somebody broke down and was like, I'm super lonely too. And you're like, oh, we couldn't have done that if this was a mixed group and we didn't all know each other super well. So you take whatever God decides to give you with that open-handed hospitality. You asked about other kinds of hospitality. I would say most of that would be at the places where I've worked, where it's hospitality on behalf of the company. So either running a large conference or running a Christmas party or assisting with a Christmas party. And that is similar in the sense that you are also trying to figure out what would people really like? What would make them feel at home? What would make them feel like they had a great time, even if it took you a ton of work? So like, for example, if we take the MZ Christmas party, which I used to not run, but I would assist with. There was a marvelous lady in charge, but she was, she's up to her eyeballs in work. And I noticed that people, the company was close-knit and friendly, but you might get, a friendly sales guy might get stuck next to a quiet engineer for 3 hours during the Christmas party. And you're like, they like each other, but like maybe that's not the best match. So I said, what if I were to volunteer to do arranged seating for, I forget, probably 300 people or so, which is tough. So I would send out a survey and ask every single employee, give me 5 people that you would like to sit next to. And I will make sure at least one of them will be there. Like you can't get all 5. Mm-hmm. And you would quickly find out the most popular people, which was very fun. Sometimes they were not what you expected. And you're like, I'm glad people like you that much. I didn't know that.
Right. And you may not even know you're this popular.
No, exactly. But they're just super easygoing.
And if you're hosting that many people, you don't know who they're who they're comfortable talking to and who their friends are.
Yeah. And so that was a really good way to just find out, what are people looking for? They're looking for a comfortable time. They don't want to go to a stiff office Christmas party where they have to sit there and just
where they're looking at their watch, when can I leave?
Right.
This is miserable.
Yeah. There are social butterflies, but I think anybody's going to get tired of small talk for 3 hours. You want somebody that you can be like, so how was the rugby game? And just really like, because they're up on their daily news. So that would be an example of like big hospitality that was not all on my shoulders, but just taking that whole, like the love for the people who are coming, trying to make sure they have a really good time. And thinking, keeping track of lots of details. And I love that kind of stuff. I get a high off that.
So are you able to offer big hospitality in your own home?
Define big. My house is tiny. I'm thinking it's about 800 square feet or so, with a living room that if there are 17 people in my house, we're all bumping
like
into each other.
Shoulder to shoulder. No one can sit.
It is shoulder to shoulder, excuse me. And then the guys start to go outside and smoke pipes, which is fabulous. So I host as big of a hospitality as I can in my house. And again, that's also thinking along the terms of like, if I'm lonely and I need to do, what should I do to fill this very practical, basic need? And then coffee hour was born. So therefore, if I have the basic love of big hospitality, but I can't host the baby shower because I'd be like, church ladies, please only show up 15 at a time. Like, and that's not what a baby shower is all about, right? So I'm like, well, what can I do? It was like, well, host parties in the summer and invite them to my yard, which is only slightly bigger than my house, but at least there are no walls. You can fit 35 people outside, and that's big enough to host. I've hosted friends' birthday parties. I've hosted wine tasting parties. And trying to, another limitation besides size would also be budget. Everyone's working with a budget.
Yes.
So, and mine was fairly small. Like probably because I just chose to spend more on like clothes or something, but it was fairly small. So I was like, I can't feed 35 people dinner. I don't have the tables for that. I don't have the chairs for that. I have room for more like cocktail style mingling and that sort of stuff. So I'm like, well, what kind of food do people like to eat if they're mingling and some of them are standing, some of them are sitting? And what's a conversation starter? So I thought, let's have a wine and chocolate party. And so not everybody will bring chocolate. I think I will provide most of the chocolate, like little miniature chocolate mousses and bars broken up into little pieces on plates. It's easy to start to fund the chocolate and take care of people's sweet tooth. But then you ask everybody to bring their favorite bottle of wine in a paper bag so people can't see what it is. And you have a wine tasting competition. So everyone's voting on the best one. So again, that's like, okay, somewhat big. It's as big as I can go. I think 35 is probably the most I've had over at one time. And it's just working with the limitations that God has given me and trying to give people as fun a time as they can and want to come back and not remember the time that there was not enough food or not enough seating. You know what I mean?
Or they had to sit next to a really quiet person who didn't talk for 3 hours.
Exactly.
I love the chocolate and wine tasting party idea.
It's really the best. I mean, maybe the girls like it more than the guys. I think the guys like the wine more. The girls are like chocolate.
And chocolate pairs with wine really well. And it would be fun to see what chocolate pairs with what wine and how it tastes different.
I never even thought about that. Chocolate has a reason.
The connoisseurs at least, go into depth.
That's true. That's true. And now that you mention it, I did have to have palate cleansers as well, like sliced apples or just some cheese to break up the sweetness of everything. So cheese and crackers also go a long way. Fairly cheap. You can feed a lot of people. Some really good brie. With some Winco Ritz Mimic cat crackers.
Sounds
Not
delicious.
even the real Ritz because those are more expensive. Like get Winco brand.
Get the store brand.
Yeah.
You provided the food.
Right.
But
most of it. Yep.
A lot of times if you're inviting a group over, they don't mind bringing things. So if budget really was a concern and you're thinking, wow, I can't even, say buy all the chocolate if someone was having that idea, just having everybody bring their favorites.
Something we'll do. One thing we've done for coffee hour that it has also been like a little bit of an investment, but then has a big, what do you call it?
Rewards.
Yeah. Big rewards would be ice cream maker, because then you get a $60 ice cream maker that makes 10 cups or so. And then you buy the whipping cream and the milk and the sugar. Not that expensive. People adore homemade ice cream.
Oh,
They're like,
a treat.
It's like it is soft serve. But then if you say everyone bring your favorite topping, then you're not raiding the Winco bulk section for the peanut M&Ms and the gummy bears or whatever people's favorite topping is. And it's a way for them to contribute in a way that makes like, this is unique about them. They like this topping best. So that's another budget idea is get something like a waffle maker, ice cream maker, pancake griddle, something that you just provide a few ingredients and there's a lot of reward serving
and
yummy breakfast
brings
food.
The toppings.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you have a whole bar.
Exactly.
A waffle bar,
yes.
pancake
or
bar.
one time this was thanks to my husband. He's honestly he's more into food than I am. I had food allergies for a number of years that kind of just restricted my imagination, but he's like, we should have a cereal day at coffee hour. And I'm like, are we? Yes, apparently we're kids because we're going to have a cereal day. He's like, everybody bring your favorite cereal from when you were little.
Captain Crunch.
And yes, seriously, everybody had the funnest time. It's like we ran into so many coffee hour people at Winco right after church. And then everyone was buying cereal after church.
What was the top cereal that showed up?
Oh my gosh, I don't remember.
I probably would have brought Cracklin' Oat Bran.
I don't even know what that is.
As a kid.
Is that a Southern thing or is it available up here?
It's not. Some stores don't have it. And then occasionally I will see it still. It's really expensive now, but it's like these, I don't even remember who makes it, but it's almost like these not O, but yeah, I guess that is kind of like an O-shaped cereal, but it's really delicious.
No, I don't think I've even heard of it, but that's not surprising. I'm really not up on my cereal. So I don't remember the most popular, but it was just the idea was very fun. And everybody is packing away cups of puffed up sugar that tastes great.
They're thinking of all the sugary cereals their mom wouldn't buy.
Yes.
My favorite was Fruit Loops.
Yes.
I never bought that for you.
No, but they loved it and they knew it.
My kids said that. Occasionally we did actually. We did break down and let them have their sugary cereals sometimes for
Saturday morning
a big
with cartoons.
Yes, exactly.
I think my husband's mom let him put sugar on top of his cereal. So that kind of explains his tastes
Well, and that kind of defeats the purpose of buying the real, healthy cereals.
He still loves it. He loves the sugar.
Pretty great. So if you were hosting people into your home, would you say these are the things you would do still? Or now that you're married, do you have a specific menu that you would serve for, say, if you have a dinner? Or do you host people for dinner? Or do you still more try to do bigger groups where you're hosting coffee hour or wine and cheese or wine and chocolate, rather? Yeah, what does your hospitality look like
We
now?
do a mix. As soon as my husband came into the picture, one of his first things was to say, I want to continue coffee hour. But he is a coffee nut, like roasting his own, wrote a book about roasting your own coffee, that kind of person. So he goes, I really want to up your coffee game. Because I would just get grounds, not know what they taste like because I don't drink coffee. So it was probably a hostess fail, is that I'm serving a drink that I don't like.
Now they're
so
having
I
the
can't
most
do a good job.
delicious coffee ever.
Right. So he's like, we're going to get these grounds. I'm going to grind it fresh. And we got a really good coffee maker for our wedding. So he upped the game for coffee hour, and we still do the same idea, but he brings his own contributions that are a little bit more mainstream. He's like, tater tot casserole. And I'm like, what? I didn't grow up eating that. We were pretty healthy growing up. And so he's like, yes, tater tot casserole. Let's do it this Sunday. So he'll have more just like the really popular ideas, the cereal, tater tot casserole. What else? He makes sure that cinnamon rolls make a regular appearance. That is, I do know what cinnamon rolls are, but I think he encourages me to serve them as much as possible. And then the other type of hospitality we like to do is, our budget is still small and our house is still small. My table will hold 4, or if we put the leaf in, it might hold 6, or we could all sit around the living room. So we'll tend to have like couples with a one toddler or something over, because we're like, we can do that. We can feed basically double. We can lose the leftovers for one day. That's not going to break the bank. And then it's just finding really good recipes that are crowd pleasers for that. So like, if you're nervous about making food for people, because now you're like, oh, it's not just coffee cake or wine and chocolate. It's like you actually have to make a dinner item, which sometimes can be like, oh, what if the chicken's dry? Or what if it's just not that yummy? Maybe I'm the weird person who likes it and nobody else will. So it's like finding the recipe that is tried and true that you can always serve people. And we haven't done it that much, but always in our back pocket is pork carnitas. So there's a really good recipe I found on Pinterest that turns out every time it is, I think it's technically slow cook, and I do it in a Dutch oven, so it's not as long as a crock pot. But that is an easy thing to serve because it is so delicious. Everybody loves Mexican food, but this is just like a step up from your ground beef tacos, which are great, and you should do those too. But doing the pork carnitas, because you can layer them with so many things like caramelized onions, avocado. Don't make guacamole. I've realized that they just drown each other out once. Because I haven't gotten to the most important ingredient, which is my husband's homemade queso. So if you're doing queso, don't do guacamole.
A secret recipe. I love queso. So does my daughter. It's her favorite thing ever. If we go to a restaurant, like a Mexican restaurant or something like that, she's ordering queso.
She's ordering the queso.
So we have to.
Okay, so I will
recipe.
have to get more measurements from my husband, but it's more like spirit inspired, because he just stands over the oven and makes it until he's happy with it. And I've never even made it. So you're talking to somebody who's watched somebody else kind of follow the spirit as he makes this thing. But I think I can kind of capture it. And it began because every Christmas Eve he grew up having nachos with queso with his family. It's just like their little tradition that just sprang up out of nowhere to do nachos. So he's like, you can get the yellow plastic yummy stuff from Winco, and that is super delicious. Do that for Super Bowl. But if you really want to make yummy queso, like you make a roux with butter and a little bit of flour and get that paste going. I think you then add milk at some point just to kind of get a little bit more substance in the pot. And then you're adding garlic. You're adding Oaxaca, a lot of Oaxaca. That's the melted cheese. It's Mexican cheese that melts really, really well. Don't try cheddar. It'll be really grainy, or any other cheese I think we've tried is really grainy. And then it's adding the juice of a pickled jalapeno jar. And you can also chop up the jalapenos, but the juice, if you're just like, it just needs something. I don't quite know what it needs.
Give it a kick. And it's so enough
delicious.
Flavor without being hot.
Exactly. It's a lot of flavor without being super hot. And then we add a bunch of taco seasoning, which gives it a nice warm orangey color.
Amazing.
And then when you're really at the end where you're like, okay, what is missing? Don't want more cumin. What is it? Chop up a lot of cilantro. Fine. I didn't realize that chopping cilantro releases more of its flavor than just tossing in the little branches. Mm-hmm. But you have to chop it up fine, then put that in. And you're like, that was what it needed. And then you serve it with the pork carnitas with black beans and lettuce, or a salad mix if you want more crunch. And it is delicious. And then you put chips on top and you just stab them with your fork and they get all broken up. So you have crunchies in your pork carnita bowl. It is ridiculous.
Okay. This menu is a must make as fast as I can possibly get this recipe from her.
And hot tip, if you might want to split it up. So if you were to do the meat one day, unless you wanted to start at 2 and just be cooking till dinner. Mm-hmm. Start the meat. It takes 3 hours in the pot. And then, of course, you're shredding it and broiling it to get it that crispy carnita texture. Mm-hmm. So if you do that one day, or at least do the slow cook, and maybe you broil it right before you serve, right? So do the bulk of the meat one day. And then the next day, you're getting all your ingredients out for guests or just your family, and then making the queso.
If you do the meat ahead of time, how do you reheat it where you don't dry it out?
Oh, that's a good question. We might actually dry it out by reheating it, but I think we just pull it apart. It's really sticky because all the fat has congealed, the fat has congealed. And then we probably do risk.
Well, maybe if you added just a tiny bit of water or something to the pot. And
this is a pretty juicy recipe. There's orange juice in it. And I think there's even barbecue sauce. It's a uniquely sweet, sticky recipe that, warning, does not taste like much until you broil it. I was super disappointed when we opened the lid of the Dutch oven and was looking at basically this lank, wet pot roast idea, which I was not into. And I felt like a failure. And my husband's like, let's just persevere, broil this. We're going to eat it. We spent money on the meat. Right, it's okay. We'll find a different recipe next time. No, we liked this recipe. It just really cooks up real nice.
Really,
yes, it does.
Thing you have to do.
You have to. Oh yeah. Unless you just want wet sloppy Joe type stuff, which is not my favorite. Good. Not appetizing.
So you mentioned all these different ingredients. Is that pretty much the complete meal?
That is. And then you do get, because there's lettuce involved or a salad mix. My favorite is a salad mix from Winco that has bits of cabbage and kale and carrots in it. So you have more crunch than just romaine, which can get really limp when you put hot queso on top. So you've got your veggies involved. You have fiber with the black beans if you want to pop in some black beans flavored with a little bit of garlic and jalapenos. What else do we do? You can really add anything. You can make it as healthy or unhealthy as you want. You can ladle on the sour cream or not. You can go light on the queso and heavier on the avocados, which are a healthy fat. So it's a nice meal to serve people if they're watching carbs at all, or are needing to watch their cholesterol or something like that.
Yeah,
so
they can build their own bowl or plate, so to speak.
Yeah.
Do you serve a dessert with it?
Oh my gosh, I'm actually...
Or is everyone so full?
Everyone is usually so full. I'll always have chocolate out. One of the things my husband requested when we were courting was can you always have secret chocolate somewhere in the house? And I'm like, you are after the right woman. I always have secret chocolate in my purse. Are you kidding me? Not let alone the house.
What are y'all's favorites? Speaking of chocolates, what do you have stashed away?
Okay, I have, I'm a sucker for Dove, mostly because I don't live in Germany or Switzerland where I can get my absolute favorite, which is too expensive anyway. So Dove is just my cheap.
What is your absolute favorite from Switzerland?
Oh man, it's one is called Frigor, and that's from Switzerland, and another one was literally called Swiss Chalet chocolate or something, and it was made only by this one little place. It's super expensive to ship. I wanted it so bad.
Did you visit Switzerland and find it there?
We did. And I made the mistake.
For your honeymoon,
this was for our honeymoon.
Yes.
And so I made the mistake of going through Germany and Switzerland and buying any bar of chocolate that looked good, putting it in my purse and then moving on. And we moved all over where we were going from town to town. And because I'm not growing in the direction I want to anymore, I wasn't trying all this chocolate. I was like, well, I'll just try it later. And then we realized too late that Swiss chocolate was our favorite and I should have stocked up on that one, but we had already left the little town.
I see.
So it was
you
tragic.
Hadn't tasted it to know.
know that was it. Get 5 of those.
Of these to
Get
take
50.
home.
Yeah.
Right.
So fortunately you can get Frigo on Amazon, but it's like 14, anywhere from 7 to 14 a bar.
Oh,
so I got it for my husband's birthday. That was worth it. So anyway, we'll always serve chocolate. I tend to not do a ton of desserts. I think mostly because by the time I've spent the time and money on dinner, there's a token dessert, a little bit of sweet afterwards, but I should probably up my dessert game.
You know, honestly, if you have a really filling meal, a small little sweet like a chocolate is perfectly fine, especially if your husband's serving the homemade roasted coffee.
Right. I figured it's not a sin not to always serve dessert, but it might be an area that I could improve on.
Well, I think you're doing just fine.
Thank you.
Occasionally, just because I do like to serve dessert, I may have a small, whether it's chocolate or a specialty cookie or something. It's not just your Oreos, but, you know, just something from a different country. You know, you can find them in the grocery store. There's different things. And so occasionally I'll have something like that just stashed in the pantry in case.
Just a little interesting thing to whip out. And I think I do end up making more dessert-like things for coffee hour. So I feel like I get that out of my system, serve everybody the rich streusel coffee cake or the ice cream. So then when I have somebody over for dinner, I'm thinking more, it's probably just like the practical way our budget has fallen is that I tend to spend the money on the food and then get a cheap chocolate dessert versus, and now for the flourless chocolate cake that took 2 pounds of butter, because then you're really not able to have people over as much as you would have. So it's like trying to have people over as much as you can means not blowing the budget on one people. Like maybe you could have twice as many if you just leaned out a little bit. So I think it's practically oriented there.
Yes. Great tips. So what's your best prep tip for having people over?
Practical prep, I think, would be doing as much as you can ahead of time. If you are like me, where you're still working full-time, or if you're a busy mom where you're working full-time, but it's all the time full-time and less predictable than an 8 to 5 sort of job. It's like doing as much ahead of time as you can in order to avoid the stress of the moment, which you should still fight the stress because it will come. Yes. But do as much as you can ahead, like clean the bathroom the day before, iron the tablecloth the day before, do anything that you can, just like, or even like if I come home for lunch and I have something that evening, chopping the onion then, or making sure the toilet's clean, you know, just doing as much as I can where it's not all like, and go at 4:00 if I come home a little early.
2 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like getting to the airport on time. Why don't you pack the suitcase just a little bit ahead of time if it's an international flight? Why don't wait until you only have this much time and you cannot afford to stop and you hope you budgeted enough time.
That's very stressful.
Right.
Well, especially if it's all on you and especially if you're working.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it also helps to have a list because for me, things fall through the cracks and I forget things. But if you kind of have a running list and then you jot down what day you're going to do things.
Yes, that can be really helpful, especially when you find yourself thinking, oh, yes, don't forget to do that. And, oh, yes, don't forget to do that. Like, well, then write it down on your phone, get a little reminders thing that you can check off or put it on your calendar, whatever your phone alerts you the best about, right? And then keeping track so that then you can, this was something I learned while going to NSA where you had way too much to do and way too little time, is if I wrote everything down that I had to get down that day and governed literally my day by 15-minute chunks, then I was like, oh, you actually can get that down. And I have to say, no hospitality has ever been as intense, except for maybe the MC conference, as intense as finals week at NSA. So it's kind of comparable. It's like time management and staying calm and not stressing.
Yes. Oh, speaking of finals, I don't even want to think about those days. But yes, I mean, like you, I am teaching full-time right now. I'm working full-time. And so if we're going to have people over, another tip, which I think touches on your menu, is that you are picking a menu that is not all hands-on right before they show up.
Right.
I pretty much have to do something like your dish where you're making the meat ahead of time and it's just done and cooked. Maybe you've even been able to prep some vegetables, you've chopped things, you've made a salad, whatever. And then the next day you can finish. But I almost never can just not have anything ready.
Yeah, that's
unless
true.
It's a Saturday and I'm working all day long.
Right.
And people are coming over that night.
I think another thing related to prepping ahead of time is being okay if there's still a 20-minute, sorry, we're still getting stuff together, guys. Come on in. Here's a glass of wine. Like if you have to do that when your guests arrive, that is fabulous. If you know them really well, they won't care. If you don't know them really well, what a warm way to show them that you are not stressed about not being perfect. Because why were you so anxious about being perfect? Was it for them or for you? Like it's such a great way to show true love and relaxation is if you're not super stressed that you're still dicing the avocados or putting the cilantro in the queso or whatever, you know?
And a lot of people have given tips, one or the other, either put a glass of wine in their hands or put a knife in their hands, you know, kind of read the room. Are they uncomfortable because they're standing there watching you work and they keep asking? If so, let them help chop the cilantro. And if not, if they kind of come and sit and you can tell they're tired from their day, we'll just put a drink in their hands. Too.
Yeah, I love whatever they need. Yeah, 100% whatever they need.
So speaking of showing warm hospitality to those coming into your home, what are your top tips for showing people warm hospitality when they come into your home? One is what we just mentioned, I think, just making them feel like when they come in, they're welcome. Even if you're not quite done with the meal, you're not showing stress.
Right. I think there's a whole category of that we could call not being stressed. And one of them is a subset is like, don't be stressed if you're late, quote unquote. But also remembering that every guest is Jesus. When he says, when you visited me in prison and gave me food and water and everything, you were doing that for me. And it's easy to think, okay, so I've never visited anybody in prison. And you're like, wait. The whole point was like, where are you giving people cups of cold water? Where are you giving them food? Where are you clothing them? What's the translation to my day? It's like, yeah, when people come over to my house, that's one of the closest ways in which I can love the Jesus that he sent to my door that day. A huge aspect of that is not freaking out over when you are late or when they are early. It's easy. It's easy to feel super irked at somebody that you really do love, but you're all of a sudden super judgy of them for showing up early because you're like, don't they have a watch?
Don't you know that last 15 minutes of prep is the most vital?
It's the most important, or even just like they presumed. I mean, you can get so snippy in your own mind, and hopefully it doesn't come out. So anyway, you could get stressed about that. You could be a whirlwind of anxiety if things aren't coming together, if the food didn't turn out, if the coffee cake overflowed, whatever. But then also if people come and just like house rules are not the same, like they didn't wipe their shoes, it's clearly February outside, and they did not ask if they should take off their shoes. If they brought their 3-year-old over and I'm like, my house is not baby proof. And then they don't take the shoes off the little 3-year-old's feet before she climbs on the white couch, and just realizing I love it going over to other people's houses and watching them be the eye of the storm. You have to kind of channel Princess Kate, if that's a helpful image, just like, cool. If you can do this in high heels and stay calm, just like kind of get that image of just better. Like, just be chill. Do not be the fuss budget. We all know what that's like. We've either seen it or done it. And so being relaxed whenever people are making those little faux pas or spilling something, or honestly, just being the awkward guest who interrupts or tries to steer the conversation to themselves. So just trying to be warm. This is not something I've done.
Host or hostess.
I have definitely not always done a good job of this at all. It's something that I'm like, ooh, this is, so check. You had people over to your house. Could you be more relaxed next time? Let's work on that part.
Well, and I think it probably is kindness to maybe set some boundaries. If you do have guests coming in that if they don't know your expectations and you're not clear with your expectations, well, then you're trying to not let that frustration come up, but then they never really knew either.
And that's not loving either.
Like
so
if you really did have a house that had a white couch, or white carpet, maybe a cute little sign that says, please take off your shoes.
Exactly.
There's slippers in this clean slippers in this basket if you need them, or, something like that, where it's very, set expectation of like, okay, your 3-year-old needs to take off their muddy snow boots or whatever.
Right. And basically the higher the stakes are, the more you're likely to snap at something, the more you should either clearly communicate or put the thing away. Say something is super breakable and the 3-year-old keeps reaching for it. You're like, there's no problem putting that out of reach and having the coffee table look a little dumb without the centerpiece. Like what?
Yes.
Again, who are you serving? It can easy to be like, but people will think
but my
that
centerpiece
I
is so
don't have a
beautiful.
centerpiece.
Right.
Like, and clearly this space needs it. And you're like, maybe it should be more clear that you love the little 3-year-old who wanted to grab your tulips.
Right.
Like, maybe that should be the emphasis. So yeah, either clearly communicating and doing it in a way that's fun. Like, hey, do you mind just grabbing her shoes real quick? And the mom's usually like, oh yes, of course. And they're probably feeling pretty guilty, and you don't want to layer that on.
Right.
So yeah, trying to just either let it go or communicate in a very fun, friendly way.
That's a great tip. And
Thank
one we
you.
can all work
Trial
on, to
and
be
error.
honest. I mean, I think everybody has to work on that for sure.
I definitely have a Judgy McJudge face that my husband has caught, probably more than anyone, because he's living with me, and he's like, he'll be like, sometimes it's towards total strangers in the store if they do something dumb right in front of me and make me wait or something.
You just can't help it. Something comes over your face. Where
it's a judge
all
face.
Over your face,
yes,
so to
and I
speak.
totally think I'm hiding it. And he's like, oh, you can tell. I'm like, oh, time to fix my heart. If it's on my face, it's in my heart.
That's pretty great. You don't have a poker face, as they say.
No, I can if I pulled it on. I actually did. Not about hospitality. Actually, it is. My parents had an undercover cop over one time. He was traveling through town. He was like this young guy who was an undercover cop. And we played, I don't know the polite word for the game. Is it cheat or lie or BS? Like, I think it has a number of names where you're supposed to lie about what you have. I fooled him. So I can have a poker face even to an undercover cop. But anyway, that's a different topic.
You just were prepared for it. It wasn't some shocking thing in
if
the grocery
the KGB
store.
comes after the Christians in the U.S., hopefully
You'll
I
be
can
prepared.
lie about where I'm hiding them.
Right.
The ultimate hospitality.
Exactly. Hopefully that won't be a story. But
Hopefully, you never know. If my novel comes true.
Circling back to your novel. This has come full circle here. This is going to be a very interesting
Little
take on,
smorgasbord.
hopefully not the future.
Hopefully not.
So what is your must-have kitchen item and where can we find it?
I would say the one that I reach for more than I ever thought I would when my husband put it on our registry is an air fryer. And it works really well for us because we're 2, maybe feeding 4 people if we have somebody over. But it cooks chicken in the only way that I like it. I think I overate it as a dieting teenager where I was like, chicken's lean. Let's do lots of chicken. Because if I bake it, or worse, if you put it in the soup that you're making and then you just pull it out again and dice it once it's cooked. And I'm just like, I just don't like wet. I don't like dry. I don't want it to taste like chicken. I want it to taste
to have some
nummy. So air frying at 400 degrees for like 25 minutes gives it like this crispy sort of outside and fully cooked inside. And I really like chicken thighs. I know they're a little bit more expensive, probably a little bit more fat, but the fat keeps it just moist enough that you don't hate yourself while eating it. Again, it probably was just ODing on it 20 years ago or so.
But you figured out a way to make it really delicious just by throwing it in an air fryer.
And that was Ben's idea.
That is wonderful. And what seasonings are your favorite to use?
Oh, it depends on the recipe, but sometimes if we're doing, it's not usually, sometimes it's Mexican, so we'll use like a taco seasoning, but a really good cheat for a more just generic spicy meal is this Cajun seasoning at Winco. It has salt, pepper, probably paprika. And I know I'm saying that wrong. I have a Hungarian friend who's like, paprika. I'm like, so sorry.
I said it wrong every time
paprika.
I've ever said it.
So, and then it has, I forget what else, but it has things that are like, it could be Italian, it could lean Mexican, it could just be yummy American mix. And then you could take the flavor a little bit further by like then adding the parsley or the basil or whatever distinct flavor you want to get it. But the Cajun seasoning has been just like, it probably has 6 spices in it. That's really, really good. And it goes with a lot.
What else do you use your air fryer for? Do you do vegetables, bacon? What are your favorite things?
We use it to crisp up anything that needs to just be
reheated.
Reheated, and you don't want it to you don't just want to zap the thing. I don't know if we've tried reheating sourdough, because you know how it doesn't get it, like the crunchiness of the crust goes away after it's fully cooled. I don't remember if we've tried that, but we've done, say, like homemade pizza. I'd made it the day before, thin crust Italian homemade pizza. And then you're like, we really don't want to just zap it all soggy. And so you put that in there. Or like,
it tastes fresh. I'm sure.
It does. It tastes fully fresh. If you're doing beignets, if you're trying to make fries. We've tried to make the sweet potato fries. I don't know that we've had great success, but sweet potatoes are tricky. Anything like that you're trying to get fresh and crispy, especially if it was frozen or it came from the day before, it works pretty well.
It's extra delicious.
Oh, taquitos. We splurged on some Costco taquitos, and they are so good.
They're so good in the air fryer.
They're so delicious.
What's your favorite brand? Do you have one?
I don't remember what this brand is, but it was clearly better than the Winco one. So just hustle on down to Lewiston and get yourself some Carnitas, not Carnitas, taquitos.
Oh, taquitos.
Taquitos from Costco.
Okay.
Costco,
okay.
whatever
Well,
Costco
I will
has.
Look for those.
They're super good. And then we dip them in what I call a jalapeno popper sauce.
Oh my goodness.
Have to share this as well.
Is that a recipe?
It is a recipe I made up because I was like, I want the taste of
I will have to post this.
a bean dip, but I was like, I don't want all the beans. I just want a yummy Mexican. It could be a salad dressing. It could be a dip. It could be, put it down on a wrap, put a little bit of the sauce down on a wrap, put in some meat and roll it up with some lettuce. So you start with a block of cream cheese, add a splash of milk just so the blender is not choking on the cream cheese. It really does thin quickly. So just go like a quarter cup at a time. Then you're putting in jalapenos and jalapeno juice, and that also thins it. So maybe save the milk for last when you can tell how much more liquid you need. And then you're putting in cilantro, and then you're putting in taco seasoning. And all of this is just like whatever looks good to you. A little bit, everybody's different, like how much spice they want. And you blend it all up, and it is so good. It tastes like the cream cheese layer of a really good taco dip, and it adds so much flavor.
Yes.
You don't have to eat a whole lot. And it's not like, I was getting tired of mayonnaise-based dressings, which are super high fat, and cream cheese is also high fat, but it's not.
It has a different flavor.
Super different. Like the cream cheese really adds a totally unique flavor to this jalapeno popper sauce.
That sounds delicious. I'm going to have to try that and post
all the
recipe.
Mexican things.
All the recipes we've talked about you can find on comeoverfordinner.com. So head over there. There's
Now I have to write them down.
Her page will have them under recipes, but there's also an index where you can just look up the title. Do you have a story from all your years of hospitality, funny, horror?
Oh man,
some immoral that we can learn, or no stories that come to mind?
Oh, I'm sure. I tend to try to hide my failures from my own self, but I could talk about my most recent one, which was last Sunday.
Those are the ones we tend to remember the most.
Yes.
The ones that just happened.
I think it kind of goes, a lot of this keeps going back to mindset, humility, loving your guests, accepting whoever comes to your home. And another one would be just being able to laugh at yourself if something does fail. So last Saturday, I was making this, what was supposed to be an amazing pumpkin streusel thing that I think it was either probably Handle the Heat. I get a lot of tips from her, but somebody was like, this is like the best pumpkin bread ever. And it has streusel in it. And I don't know if it's because I don't actually have a loaf pan or I don't know what 9x4 means or whatever, but I layer the thing in, and it already has like surface tension when I put it in the oven. Meaning an hour later when I check, well, you would think I would know that, but I apparently don't make quick breads enough because I thought it's going to stay put right where I put it. I opened the door and it is on the oven floor, like Vesuvius over on the oven floor. And I was just like, it was more just like the sting of my pride getting dinged because I was like, there was still plenty of loaf left to serve other people. You could just put the streusel back on, eat what you could off the oven floor. Right. But it was more just like, I didn't win. I kind of lost here. And I'm like, well, you apparently needed that. However much it hurt your pride is how much you needed it. And my husband has a great mantra when he sees me trying something new. He'll routinely say, I want you to feel free to fail. I really need you to try something new and not fall apart if it doesn't work. It's
the way you learn, honestly. I mean, now you know what a loaf pan is, or that if it's at the very top, that you don't have one, you need to go buy one. Or if something's at the very top, maybe you need a slightly bigger dish, because I've done that before where I think, and then it's overflowing. The other thing you do if you're not sure, you think,
put something underneath. You would have thought I'd know that.
Or something underneath.
I've had enough cobbler's juice over that I should have known. But it was just one of those days where it's like, I think I was just meant to fail. There were so many reasons I should have known this. And I didn't, and God wanted me to be humble about it.
After years and years and years of cooking, you give yourself a lot of credit. You think, well, I'm not going to make, such and such mistake. last week, speaking of the latest fail, last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was making a new batch of scones. I was just trying it out, a small recipe, but it was enough for my family. And then I was going to share some with my twin sister and her son and his wife. They were going on a camping trip. And I'm like, well, it'll be enough, that I can send some fun scones for their camping trip. So I pulled them out of the oven. And I'm over at the sink rinsing out the dishes that I'd use, and I am really smelling these scones strong. Like they're really cooking and almost that burnt smell. I'm like, but I've pulled them out of the oven. How are they burning? So I turn around and I had forgotten.
You put them on a stove that was on?
Well, it was not on, but it had been.
Oh,
like really
my
recent.
gosh.
Or maybe it was still on low, like I had forgotten to turn off the burner because I had made a drizzle for the top.
Oh, my gosh.
So maybe it was still on low. Maybe I had just turned it off. I mean, this is such a rookie mistake.
Right.
Like,
your mom told you, always check the burner.
Yes. Did I do this?
Am I 14, first time in the kitchen?
So the bottom of those scones were like crisp toast. I mean, they weren't burnt beyond recognition, but they were, scones are supposed to be soft.
They're
and
not supposed to be blackened like fish.
No. The bottoms were extra crisp.
Oh, man. Okay, that reminds me of the time I put a little pie plate that held cinnamon rolls. It was a family brunch. We're all like over in the living room, but I didn't realize I had put it on my sister's stovetop. Well, I knew I had done that. I didn't realize that her stovetop was on. I had turned on the wrong burner for the tea kettle. So right about the time everybody's wanting their tea, there is this terrific china kaboom
explosion
in the kitchen, and we go over there, and like my beautiful blue and white pie plate has just cracked from the heat. And I was mostly, my first sensation was just like, oh, I'm pleased to know what happens to it can explode. Didn't know that. Is that a chemistry lesson right there? And I was like, it's okay. We had already eaten the cinnamon rolls. It was just, now I just get a new plate.
At least you had done that. I mean, when I had a glass pan explode, because I did the same thing years ago.
The food was still in it.
The food was still in it.
Oh,
it was
man. It
brownies
was probably dinner.
I was carrying.
Oh, no.
We were heading out of town just a couple hours away to visit family. And I had, these perfectly made brownies. And of course, when the glass explodes, you have to throw everything
because
away.
like you could be serving people shards for their innards.
Yes. Yep.
Not friendly.
Right as they're walking out the door. So.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Humility.
And on that one, I know it was off the burner, but it was the same situation. I had made a frosting for the top, and the frosting was sitting on the back burner to cool, but the front burner was still hot.
Yes.
Because I had just finished.
That's why they have those little warning lights, like hot surface, still activated.
Probably
and we're like,
still there, or well, it was probably an older stove where all
but
you could see was
you get
like
so
the
used
little.
to seeing it. Like, yes, I know the burner's on. Thank you. You know,
I think on this stove maybe there was a little light that was lit up somewhere saying it was hot. Who even knows? But I was packing 4 or 5. I think 4 children at the time. Teensy, we were packing in and out of the house. Packing.
You
stuff
actually need a voice saying, "This will self-destruct." These brownies
Don't
will
throw
self-destruct.
the glass pan on top of the stove right now. Put it on the counter on top of a hot pad. I was just like, what in the world? I've cooked so many years and still pull these rookie mistakes off.
It's actually refreshing to realize we still have it in us.
Yes. God keeps us humble.
Yes.
Makes us still laugh and be patient,
For sure.
I think it's Nancy Wilson. I'm sure other people, her husband too. Doug Wilson recently said this in a sermon. I've heard this multiple times lately, which, obviously it's sticking because it's speaking to my heart. But, if you pray for patience, God will give you an opportunity
such a dangerous
to
prayer.
Patience.
Yeah. I have to add another prayer to that. I'm like, and Lord, can you give me a 10-second warning that it's about to come?
Yes.
Let me get caught flat-footed.
If you're asking God for patience, like you say, it's a dangerous prayer, but a very good one. Be open to receiving those moments of learning the patience and being able to just
breathe it
deep
out.
Breath. Let's just do the task in front of us.
Yes.
Well, the task in front of me right now is cleaning up glass and brownie.
That is true. I have
whatever.
I have many times in the kitchen, even if it wasn't a catastrophe. It was just something I didn't want to do, like put away the groceries. But you just say, Lord, thank you that these were the good works you prepared beforehand for me to do.
I have found the very best thing to do is do the hardest thing first. Make yourself.
Yes. Do the thing you don't want to do. Put the toilet paper away. Always the worst. I'd rather put the fruit in the little platter. But no, the toilet paper needs to be stacked in the cupboard.
Yep. Whatever you don't want to do it first. Make yourself do it. And then if it's just like, oh, turn something on.
Fun
Your
music.
favorite podcast, fun music, something upbeat, something that's just really
light a
gonna make
candle
you cheerful.
first before you do it. You're like, why don't we create a mood?
The other hot tip for me, especially, I mean, you were talking earlier, sometimes we do feel lonely or just, I haven't talked to so-and-so for a long time. Phone call. Put in put on headphones or earbuds or whatever, and
catch up with that person.
Walking around. I've had at some points in life, I've lived far across the country from my sisters. You can clean an entire kitchen, an entire bathroom, and hardly even know what you're doing because you're on the phone for an hour.
You're investing in fellowship
with your sister or your mom or your grandma or whatever. Make those phone calls with those people that you're really missing.
That is such a good tip.
I've done that before. Or, like now I'm across country from a couple of my kids, and sometimes I'll prop the phone up and we'll do FaceTime. Not always FaceTime. Sometimes it's just a phone call. We can talk forever, and I'm getting the whole
turning a profit
done.
on the time. I will turn on the podcast, what have you, and feel like I'm in a conversation. But I'm not.
And you're laughing.
But I'm just laughing and thinking,
in the kitchen by
me
yourself.
Too. Oh, wait, I'm by myself. Nobody can hear me.
Yes, that's a great podcast. Yeah. I enjoy it very much. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and give us all your hot tips. And I love the recipes that we're going to share, as well as the ideas of different types of hospitality and working within a budget and working within the constraints God's given you. And recognizing you can still do hospitality.
You can.
And still be fun.
No matter how tiny your house or budget is or how dingy the carpet. I've done it all. Yeah. I've had people over to a blue carpeted house. Yeah. You can do anything if you can have people over to a blue carpet house. With vivid green couches to boot. Hey, it was really, just the Duplo house. It looked like
colorful
Duplos.
And modern. The Duplo.
Yep, it was great.
Oh, it's great.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Until next time. Bye for now.